Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I am your host, Jason Cooper. I am the sales relationship coach. And the reason why relationships in sales is so important, you guessed it, it is extremely important. So, how are you supposed to connect with your client if you don't build that relationship, even if you're going in cold? You have to build up that rapport, that trust, that credibility. But longevity is always about building that relationship with your client. And today I have a great, incredible guest. I have Joel Stevenson, and we're going to be touching on technology and how to increase productivity within the sales cycle. And lots of different facets. And before we went on live, we were speaking about how his software enables productivity and streamlining the process a lot more. So you're very welcome, Joel.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on. So Joel's CEO of Yesware. If anyone's ever heard of it, type it into Google. You will see the technology there. I've downloaded it, started to play with it. He's a leader of sales productivity. And prior to that, general manager of Wayfair B2B division within sales, 100 million revenue. Stephen began his career leading companies' home improvement products division. Like, there's lots of different areas. So rather than me talk about it, let you talk about it because you know what you've done. So all of that, I'm intrigued by all of the anchor points along the way because sales is such a massive area. Let's have a look at the finite area of how you got to where you got to, and then we can discuss technology because that's really exciting.
Yeah. It's all sort of related, which I'll hopefully get to towards the end. But yeah, I started my career in sales. First job ever out of college was a company called GTE, which is now owned by Verizon. It was a phone company in the U.S. and they had a great training program. And I didn't necessarily think that I would be a long-term salesperson, but somebody convinced me that, whatever job you do, you're selling. And
Yeah.
so a good place to start your career is in sales. So I thought it seemed like good advice. So I took that. And I worked there for a while. And then I actually get hired by one of my customers who was in the enterprise software space right as we were sort of leading up into the dot-com heyday. They got bought by this company called Ariba, which was a high flyer back then. And so I ended up doing a whole bunch of different sales type jobs, from channel to alliances,
Mhm.
overlay sales. And eventually, we had 9/11 in the U.S. and then sort of the Great Recession, this or that recession
Yeah.
that followed on after that. And I ended up taking some time off and going back to business school, and with the aim of trying to really build out the quantitative side of my skill set and resume, where I'd been only in customer facing roles before that. So I went and did a finance concentration. Then I came out and did sales consulting for a company called ZS Associates for a while, and then sort of got the startup bug sort of bit again, and went to work for a supply chain company where I was doing sort of account management
Yeah.
type roles. And then that eventually led me to Wayfair, which at the time was this little company called CSN Stores. And I went totally away from sales at that point and managed a group of we used to have all these individual websites at Wayfair. So I managed,
Mhm.
30 or 40 of those that had to do with home improvement. And then we grew. I ended up running our UK business for a couple of years and living in London, and then moved back to the US to do run our financial planning and analysis function. But then the last thing that I did there was I built out a B2B division of Wayfair, where, think of it as like us calling on interior designers and contractors and builders
Mm.
versus individual homeowner or apartment owner, or anybody that's trying to buy home goods. And that was something I started as sort of a side project in my first role there. It
Mm.
grew. I went away from it for a while, and then I came back to it. It was about $100 million division, but scattered all over Wayfair. So we sort of reassembled the pieces, sort of built a new vision for what it was was going to be. And then we took it to, 400 million by the time I left. And now I think it's a $1.5 billion division of Wayfair. So it's incredible. But Wayfair eventually got a little bit too big for me, and I was starting to look for the next thing to do. And I was one of the reasons we were able to grow that division so fast was we spent a lot of time investing in technology to drive sales productivity. And I saw the power of that. And so we had an investor in common with Yesware, and there were some introductions made, and it was really neat to be able to join a company like that was also in Boston, and sort of, go on the other side of the table from now being a sort of a buyer of tech to a seller of tech. So it's kind of fascinating.
I think technology is here to help us and enable us. I mean, it sounds like your background is fairly similar to mine, because I stopped for a while and I went back to studying university and business studies and all of that, and then I reinvented myself. But I think the area of tech and the area of technology to help us either streamline a process, make us more efficient as sellers, because the sales process, depending on the size of the company that you're working with, there's lots of different key facets in the area. So efficiency is absolutely key. So anything that you can do to add value forward to make your productivity, making your sales life easier. So if you're replying to an email, or if you're doing research, or if you're doing something, it should be there to enable us. And we've got all of these wonderful tools out here. We've got to use them strategically. So as a salesperson, how is Yesware enabling us to be more strategic about what we do as a seller? Because it's all about the sales point of view. But then from the client and the customer's point of view, because at the end of the day, we're an enabler for helping our customers grow with knowledge and whatever it might be. So a lot of different questions there, I know, because I'm fascinated by the process.
Right. Well, if we started at the beginning for somebody that isn't using this type of tech, like what would you sort of, the first thing that I think you should probably get out of it are some time savings. So, not rewriting the same email over and over again, being able to send the similar content, but perhaps personalized to a bunch of people, but save time in doing that. If you're manually logging things into Salesforce, that we would save you time from doing that. Sending out a link that someone can book a meeting versus you going doing all the calendar back and forth. So time savings would be the first thing that you should hope to achieve, and then you would invest that time in doing better prep for calls, or having better follow-up, or doing a better job with personalization, all the stuff that the sort of the non-value add things that you save your time on to really put the things, figuring out better questions to ask, the stuff that really makes a strong salesperson. Then the next thing that you want to try to achieve, I think, with tools like ours, is information. And so ideally you want to have a better understanding of what's going on in your sales process. And, the simplest way you might understand that is just getting a sense of how customers are engaging with your emails, with your content. Are there certain links that are getting clicked? If you sent a presentation, did they spend a lot of time on the pricing slide, but maybe not so much time on some of the other slides? Are you getting a lot of sort of open activity for a particular email? Is if you were to sort of put a group of 50 people and send them one message, you send another 50 people another message, does one of those messages far outperform the other one, in which case you should start to, so it's all about taking that information to refine not only your individual one-to-one interactions with folks, but also your overall process.
Have you seen any trends? Because data is so massive, and like I know it's privacy with your clients and everything else like that, but you must have seen some strategic trends there along the way, because everyone's looking for success. Everyone's looking for something that's going to help them maintain or give more success. Is there anything specifically that stands out to you and goes, well, that works and that works and that works?
Yeah, it's interesting. There, one of the things that there's some data for this, and some of this is a leap of faith. I'll maybe just I'll take a minute and explain what I mean by that. So as people start to get into sales, enablement or sales automation, type of tech, one of the things that's a sort of alluring thing to do is to just spam the world, because it's a lot easier to spam the world when you can load up 2,000 people into a campaign and hit send versus
Yeah.
sending 2,000 individual emails. And there's a from what we can tell, there's a point of diminishing returns whereby some automation is good, but too much automation can do a lot of damage. And
Absolutely can do, yeah.
the leap of faith part of it, though, is that if I send an email campaign out to 2,000 people, and let's say I get 2 responses that are like, "Oh, this is so great, I want to talk to you," I might think, "Oh, well, okay, well, this is a great campaign. Like, I got 2 people to talk to me. Maybe I didn't have any before." But what you probably won't see are the 50 people that you really pissed off because you
Yep.
sent them a bad cold email, or the 50 people that sort of have soft unsubscribed from you, or the 50 people that now have formed a poor relationship of you or your company because you're seen as sort of a moronic spammer. Like, there's no real way to measure that. But I think we've seen enough evidence. You look at people sort of shaming SDRs or BDR roles on, like, there's a lot of that
Yeah.
anecdotal data out there that suggests, like, you really can take it too far. And so there is a bit of a sweet spot. And what we've seen in our data is, if you're sort of a full cycle rep and you're trying to handle a bunch of conversations, when you start to get beyond, I would say, somewhere between 100 and 200 conversations a month, or like people that you're trying to interact with in a month, quality starts to degrade very quickly.
Yep. Yep.
Beyond the 200, and reply rates, all that stuff goes down quite fast.
Yeah, like I've noticed that. And what is quite frustrating, you did mention if you did send out 2,000 emails within constant contact, or whoever the
Hmm.
platform might be, you tend to annoy a lot of people at the same time, because that process hasn't been. Are they people that are interested? Are they people that are quite generic? Who are these people? Have you had any interaction with these people before in the past? I'm always intrigued and interested in the flip side of it. What's gone on? The conversation, what's gone on? And I find that a little bit in social selling, in ways when they're using Sales Navigator to spam people. And
Hmm.
I got it today, actually. They spam me without the relationship, because I'm always about maintaining and having the conversation first and then taking it offline, because that's how you can really find if they're interested. Then you can take it offline, and I've been
Right.
very successful in that on social. But that's a social conversation. It's not a flyer drop. The way I
Right.
look at it, it's like posting around a business park and then hoping someone's going to bite. But that's not the way to do it. So how can you? What's your steps that you enable customers, your customers, to be more efficient at what they do? And what's the success from how you see that and perceive that?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe just one quick point on the LinkedIn thing. It is sort of a shame that, I think for a lot of CEOs like me, like, my LinkedIn is an absolute dumpster fire, from, random emails that mean nothing to me. And it actually makes it harder to find the ones that are thoughtful, and have been done well. So I think that's a little bit of, like, the tragedy of the commons on the sales side. I think that we've sort of, in some ways, I think tech vendors like us have maybe somewhat enabled that, perhaps in the wrong way. But when you think about, I think trying to do it the right way, what we see is, as I said, like, you want to take I would say, uh, a manageable bite of the apple, such that you can really do some real personalization, of the
Mhm.
emails. And so, like, what we would advise people to do is, build a template or build a bunch of templates that form a campaign, but make sure that there's sufficient room for you to really personalize those messages so that they hit home. And as you then start to build up a campaign, what we tend to find is the optimal number of touches for somebody if you don't know them
Mhm.
is something around 7 to 8 between 14 days. And that could be any number. It could be phone, it could be email, it could be LinkedIn, what have you. But it tends to be a number similar to that. And I mean, one question I think reps often have is about, well, how persistent should I be in following up? Like when should I know when to follow up or not follow up? And one of the things that we find, this is kind of interesting, is 75% of emails sent that are going to be responded to are responded to in the first hour.
Yeah, yeah.
And 93% are responded to within the first 4 hours. And then it's 95% for the first day. So if you didn't get a response in the first day, there's only a 5% chance that that person's actually going to respond to you. And so, there's a long tail, but if you give up after the first one, that's not that great. And so if you actually persist through those 8 touches over 14 days that we talked about, you double or triple your chances of getting in touch with somebody, particularly
Yeah,
if you've got good content.
that's really interesting, actually, because there's a lot of data out there and there's lots of research. You could be a Google king and just tap in stuff, but it's really good to know that sort of stuff just to confirm what I know is there's lots of different touch points along the way, and how you interact with the customer, telephone, email, LinkedIn, whatever other sources there are to check in with your clients or potential clients. But if you do send an email, you better make sure that you do respond. What about the language and linguistics that you use to make it more evident to your clients? And you must have seen data research based on that, what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, we've done some analysis of subject line and email bodies inside of our tool, and we actually have a tool. It's sort of a handy little tool that sits inside the side called Response Insights. And if you run Response Insights, it'll basically on the fly try to analyze the rate at which someone's going to reply to you,
Mhm.
based on sort of how you're writing your email. And this tends to change. We've got I don't know the exact stat off the top of my head, but we have a few on our blog, yesware.com /blog. We've got quite a number of posts on this where we tend to keep up with it. But a few of the things that our general themes is, like, we'll look for the number of questions that are asked inside of an email. Like, typically if there's no question asked in an email, that tends to hurt the reply rate.
Mhm.
There's sort of a sweet spot of subject line between 5 to 7 words tends to work better. And I think we haven't done a lot of work on this, but there does tend to be some things that sort of fall in and out of favor, like emojis or capitals, or using somebody's name in the subject line, etc. I don't know if there's any real strong trends to sort of point to there. But then the other one that's interesting has to do with reading level, where if you write an email that's too complicated,
Mhm.
the response rate goes down quite dramatically. And so, like, trying to target sort of actually like a kind of an eighth grade to maybe first or second year of high school type of language level is actually the sweet spot.
Because I use tools like Vidyard, so I
Mhm.
can see the reaction, because typing lots of text, no one ever reads it. Keep it really quite simple. I don't think anything's changed, but it's just the language that you use and poison the question. But I think the call to action is absolutely imperative. That there is a follow up. There is the next step, whether it's cold or whether it's something like that, just to spice up the conversation, to make it more apparent to the other person. Because cold reach, we all still do it, but I think it always has to have a follow up, meaning a call, meaning a call to action, a Calendly link, or whatever it might be, or whether it's to educate the client, excuse me,
Yep.
on what the services that you're actually offering. So,
Yep.
the question I'm going to ask you, actually, Joel, how do you use this tool process, your sales process with your clients? How do you use that with cold outreach? And what's your follow and what's your strategy there afterwards?
Yeah, this may sound like a little bit of sacrilege here, but at the moment we actually don't do a ton of cold outreach.
Okay.
What the way that we mostly go to market is through our product. So people can download a free trial of Yesware and start to use it, and then once we see that there's some people that are using it, then we actually start an outreach process. So the
Okay.
first outreach typically from us is going to be to somebody within a company that has some experience with Yesware, and we'll put them into a campaign. And the first step in the campaign is like, hey, like, can we help you get better results out of Yesware? And then if we don't hear from them, the next one is like, hey, we're still here, like we want to help. And so we sort of go through a series of steps like that. And depending on if
Mhm.
it's an individual rep using the tool, or if it's a manager or a sales executive using a tool, there's a different set of outreach that we'll do there. But it's very much centered around, if we can just get people successful with the tool, then we've got an opportunity to do something bigger with the account. So we're really trying to, one of our investors, Brad Feld from Founder Group, often talks about this give first um, uh, philosophy. And I think that's really true in sales. And like we try to do give first with our product, but I
Mhm.
think no matter, regardless of what you're, whether you have a freemium product, or, you're just trying to get your foot in the door, like give first, I think is a strong way to operate a selling process for
Yeah.
sure.
It's the Cialdini's laws of influence and persuasion of reciprocation is you give, you try, you play, and then hopefully in return they go, I like it. That's pretty much a SaaS way of working on software sales,
Yeah.
software service way of working, and how to do that. So
It,
based on that, what do you suppose to see as success? What does success mean to salespeople? What is success? What does it mean to them? Because we're looking at salespeople, and what are the character traits that you can see by? Obviously, you can just see insights and data, which is massive. But I'm looking at the top percentage of the people that use and utilize data for its best effect to reach out to their clients.
yeah. Yeah. Well, in some ways there's two metrics you're trying to move. One is you're trying to move the number of people into the funnel. Now, again, like you don't want to go too crazy with that, but if you're not really utilizing tools like Yes, where you just can't talk to as many people at the same time with the same level of authenticity. So the first bit is to be able to increase your overall capacity at all of those stages. The second bit is then, whatever your sales process is, you want to be able to move people through it at a higher percentage than whatever it was before. And it's sort of hard to generalize between one sales process or another, but from what we can see, people that use a tool like ours and are using it sort of diligently for test and iterate and improve, can get 20, 30, 40% better sales results than without a tool like ours. And if you think about, the average rep, at least in technology, probably carries something like a $500,000 to $1 million a year quota. Like you do one additional deal at 80% gross margin, like that is a very big difference
Mhm.
in what your results are. And so, we're not going to necessarily, help you ask better questions. We're not going to help you, figure out, how to manage this particular decision maker,
Mhm.
but we can help with a lot of that plumbing to where, if you've got somebody in a demo stage and you're trying to convert, a better job from demo to proposal or whatever your next step is, if you watch what's happening across a big enough set of people, you're going to eventually figure out the patterns that are working better than others. And if you're part of a team, one person figuring that out and then sharing it with the rest of the team allows the entire team to get better. And so if you look at,
Yep.
some of the customers that have been with us for a long time, from very early stages all the way through to public companies like a Monday.com, you see that pattern emerge where they're very collaborative and somebody figures something out, it gets shared. Now the whole
Yep.
team is better because one person figured something out.
That's always the best way of working, is a collaborative effort, or in a pod or whatever, especially when we're all remote at the moment. Majority of us are remote, and I think that's going to carry on
Yeah.
on the blended approach because it works. So technology is here to enable us to be more sophisticated, artificial intelligence and everything else to make are learning to connect with our clients more strategically. But I do think there's human connection behind that as well. We do need to pick up that phone, that Zoom, or be the person in the flesh, depending on where we are within that sales funnel. So the question I'm going to ask you, if you were interviewing you, what questions would you ask yourself?
I mean, how is it possible to be so smart and so handsome at the same time?
Yeah, well, that's an obvious one. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can do that one. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think one of it, one question that I find interesting is sort of thinking back from the buyer's perspective in a world where tools like Yesware have been around for a long time, and in some way sense there's an arms race and there's sort of measures and countermeasures, like how do you actually stand out in that world. And one of the things that I think people need to keep in mind is that buyers are getting more and more inbound every day. Like the volume's not going down. I mean, maybe tools, some of the spam filtering and other things are getting a little bit better. So in some cases might feel better, but in general, from 30 years of modern sales and marketing, volumes only go up. In the digital world, they don't tend to go down. And if in light of that, whereas somebody might have been able to be put into an email sequence maybe 10 years ago and they didn't realize they were in an email sequence. I think now most sophisticated buyers are going to realize that they're in an email sequence. And so what's critical as part of that, I think most people get that people want to save time, but it's critical that the buyer understands that there's a human on the other end of that. If the buyer thinks they got the same message that 5,000 other people got sent, well, guess what? I've got 300 others of those in my inbox already. And it's not going to get looked at. But amongst that, there's actually now, I think, maybe even a better opportunity to differentiate where if you took that email and you just showed it to your spouse or somebody that has nothing to do with what you're doing, so like, hey, does it look like somebody put time and energy and thought into this, and this is like a real email that to somebody, or does this look like a machine wrote it? Is a bit of a litmus test. And I think that's, as soon as somebody thinks there's not a human behind the process, you're done.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with that, because we all get emails every day. I get loads of them, and I can filter through them. I just go delete, 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 delete. But if someone's taken the time to write something that is important, and someone's taken the time to make it relevant to me, I think making yourself stand out has always been the key for sales and success in sales, and making yourself being different to everyone else. So if you can do something that's going to make you stand out, whether it's a video enabled within that, something that's personalized to them, something, a bit of research and due diligence that you've done behind the scenes about the company that you found on LinkedIn or whatever, their website or the Twitter or whatever it might be. I think that's always the key. And I think that's a golden nugget to actually feed forward to the audience here. Talking about golden nuggets, what sort of golden nuggets would you give to sales professionals that want to be successful?
Yeah, to me, it doesn't have anything to do with technology, but it strikes me from, observing a lot of salespeople over a number of years that, positive mental attitude is probably the key. It's the sort of the foundation for everything, because there's no, I suppose now a lot of rejection, maybe you don't see as much because it happens sort of behind the scenes, behind an email or, a LinkedIn message or something, versus, the early days when we physically walked into buildings and, and tried to sell things, or, or people that still day to day sort of doing, some of the door-to-door stuff. But most professional sellers aren't as much in that environment, but you're still going to face a lot of rejection, even if you have a full funnel. Best performing funnels from initial outreach all the way to close are single digits at best. A lot of them are less than single. So you're going to get 99 no's before you get to a yes. And it's I think it's very, very difficult to be a good salesperson without resilience and positive mental attitude as a foundation.
Yeah, I completely concur with that. When I run training courses now, it's the mindset that we work on first, because that's the most important thing. What people want, knowing that there will be that air of resilience, a lot of no's, but working out strategy to get more yeses than no's and working out how you can do that is absolutely extremely important to a sales process and the resilience and the mindset. And we all get it. No matter what stage or what age you're at, it makes no difference because we all get setbacks at times. We all think that we're going to get a $500,000 sale or whatever it might be for your business and your sales process. But it is that mind, your mindset, and you'll bounce back just with that air of confidence, which makes a huge difference to whatever you're doing. So, look, Joel, it's been, I really appreciate the conversation today. We probably could have chatted for another half an hour or so, but time is against us as normal. Joel, you've been very welcome on my show today on the Global Sales Leader podcast. And this is all about different facets of the sales process, the mind, technology, resilience, behavior, body language, success, lots of different areas. But the whole thing is to gain some knowledge and some insights from my guests, the likes of my guests today, so you can help yourself grow forward with all of these golden nuggets of knowledge. So I appreciate your time again, Joel.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me again.